Hello, this is a follow-up video for my previous video or YouTube video regarding SharePoint syntax. I got some queries from my client about form processing and how it works, and they do have some forms which includes checkbox. So just FYI, Microsoft did make a public preview for form processing support for checkbox in October 2021, and the general availability is targeted for March 2022. So in this video, we are going to discuss on how we can use the AI builder in Power Apps to detect checkboxes, detect some text box, and how you can use Power Automate to process the information gathered. So let's get directly to the demo. So here I have a sample form which is for a fake restaurant, and this form has been filled out using the computer. If you see, the checkbox is checked and all this stuff. One other requirement which client had brought up was how would it work if someone has filled out these forms by hand. So I have another example where someone has filled out this form by hand. They have written this is testing and so forth. So we are going to look at both of these examples in this video on how AI processes these forms. Okay, so we have one form which is computer generated or computer entered, and one form which is done by hand. Okay, in my previous video we had discussed about, and you can find the link in the description field for my previous video, we had discussed about the automate content understanding in SharePoint, which is part of the SharePoint syntax. And you go to the setup and automate content processing. So if you click on setup, scroll down under files and content, you see automate content understanding. And then you click on manage and you see this forms processing, which lets it know that which SharePoint library should show the option for creating a form processing model. The options are libraries in all SharePoint sites, libraries in selected SharePoint sites, or no SharePoint libraries. So what we are going to do is, I have this test site created for syntax testing, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a new document library over here called survey forms. Okay, and I click on create, and I have created this document library. If you go to the library settings, you will see that no content type is still associated with it. When you're in this document library, if you click on automate, and you'll find this option now called AI builder, and it will have create a model to process forms. So click on that option and it will ask you, what do you want to name this one? So I'm going to say survey testing. And right now we don't have tables in our form, and that might be an option for a later video. So you see on the content type, you have create new, and I click on create. Now if you see over here, it jumps over to Power Apps, and in a moment it will say that it's creating. It will take a few minutes. Let's wait for a few minutes and this should be created. Now the first option is, what information do we want to extract from this particular form? Generally in this survey form, if you look at, they would like to extract what did they say about the host, quality of the service you received from the host, from the server. For this example, we are just going to go with the quality of service received by the host. That's one option. And would you recommend our restaurant to a friend? And finally, sharing any additional comments. One thing to note, if this particular field was blank, you wouldn't be able to map the field from this form. So you have to make sure that for the samples, you have to have everything filled out for it in order for it to work. So let's go back over here, and I'm going to say I'm going to create a field called additional comments, which is going to track this particular where it says exceptional service, and I'm going to click on done. The next field I'm going to create is for the quality of the service you received from your host. The problem is that when you have these 5 checkboxes, you'll have to create 5 separate fields, and then we'll look at Power Automate on to setting up a field for to display the exact option. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to click on add, and if you see over here there is a new option called checkbox, and it says that it's still in preview mode. So I'm going to click on that, click next, and I'm going to call this say rates host service and option 5. Okay, so I'm going to say rate host service 5, and I'll just copy this, Control C, done. Add another one for race host service 4, done. Next, rate service 3, done. Checkbox next, 2, and finally 1. Now, one last option which I'm going to select is recommend to a friend. In this scenario, we know whether it's yes or no. So if this is not clicked, then we are just going to assume it's a no. So in this scenario, instead of creating 2 fields, I'm just going to go with one field called recommend friend. I'm going to click on done. Now when you click on next, the next option is let's create a collection, and if you see at the bottom it says add at least 5 sample documents for each collection. So I'm going to click on new collection, and I'm going to name this collection survey document collection. Okay, and I'm going to click on this plus and click on add documents, and I'm going to upload from local storage, and I'm going to select these 5 PDF documents and click on open. Now, yep, that's what I want to upload. So I click on upload documents, and now it's going to upload these documents. Once it says that everything has been successfully uploaded, click on close, and then let's click on next. Now it will take a few seconds, and now if you see over here on the right hand side, it will have additional fields, all the field names which we have specified. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to, if you hover over the checkbox on 5, you see that on the background it has detected that as a checkbox. So I click on it, and I'm going to say that's rate host service 5. The next one is rate host service 4, 3, 2, and finally 1. Scroll down. This is a recommend a friend, and then I'm going to highlight this and say that's additional comments. We have to do it for, if you'll see over here, it's still saying that the first document, everything has been verified. It still has 4 documents to go. So let's go to the second document. Same thing again. So just go ahead and do all of this stuff. If you see, each time I am getting one of the documents done, it will mark it as checked. And now all of these documents have been templated, or we have marked all these fields on all of these documents. So let's click next, and the next option, it will just give you a summary of what all you have done, and finally you click on train and it will start training this model. So go to models, and if you see over here, it's now training this particular stuff. So I'm going to pause this for a few minutes till the model gets trained, and then we'll continue. And we are back. So if you notice over here, now this particular model has been trained. So you click on, say, survey testing, which is the new model which we have created, and you'll see that it has a publish button. Now you need to publish this, because if you see over here, the Power Automate says model isn't published, Power App says model isn't published yet. So let's click on publish, and it takes a few seconds for it to be published. And once it is published, we'll have to use that model with our document library. So let's give it a few seconds, and this will say as use model. So now it is back, it says use model. On the right hand side, it says your model has been published. If you notice over here, it says no flows using your model. So let's click on use model. For some reason on my edge, this is not showing up correctly, but if you see, it says create a flow. If you just keep on scrolling over here, you will notice that you have to sign in into a connector for SharePoint. If you notice over here, I'm already connected, and then finally the Microsoft Dataverse. So I'm just going to go ahead and click on create flow, and it takes few seconds, and it will create a flow for you, which is a Power Automate workflow, and it will say your flow was successfully created. And before I go to the SharePoint library, let me just click on one flow using your model and click on survey testing. If you notice over here, it opened up in manage your flows. For some reason, it still thinks that there is potential problem in the flow checker. So click on flow checker. You'll see that it uses some connections. So I'm just going to click on remove connections so connection references can be redone. And once you get over here, you see that it's already connected, but this thing says that it's not authorized yet. So I'll click on continue and click on save, and now this workflow is ready to go. But let me show you one more thing. So let's go ahead and if you refresh this document library now and go to the views, you'll see that it has created a new survey testing view. So you click on that, and now if you notice, you have this additional comments. It seems there is either a bug with AI Builder or SharePoint side, where on this content type, it is not recognizing your rate host service file. All the checkboxes are not being implemented in these columns. And so let's go ahead and upload one particular file. So I'll just go ahead and do AI testing 1. And it will take a few minutes for it to process. So I'm again going to pause the video and then I'll come back. And we are back. So if you notice, what I did was over here, when the workflow runs, it is going to say it's failed. You go to all runs, click on this, and if you notice, if you expand this, you'll notice that it's errored out on the last step where it needs to update those particular properties. So if you go back over here, you'll see that nothing has happened on this particular document. So if you look at the error over here, it says SharePoint library field could not be resolved for rate service host 4, 3, 2, 1, 5, and so forth. So I have a call with Microsoft to see if this is an issue with their tool, and it's still not available for general use. It's still in public preview, so Microsoft might still be working on this. But anyways, what I really need to do is that when someone has clicked 5, I need to have one particular field which says that, okay, the rate of service for this host was marked as 5 or 4 or 3 or 2 or 1. So anyways, I have to modify this particular workflow to make it work. So if you look at the predict thing, it has all these outputs. So you have so if you look over here, rate host service 3 values set to false. Again, rate service host 2 recommend field values set to true, and so forth. So now we need to basically extract these values and create our workflow. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to click on edit on this workflow, and I'm going to add a few variables over here. Okay, so the first thing, I'm going to click on this, add an action, and I'm going to set up a variable and initialize a variable, and I'm going to call it additional comments, and that's for the string. So I click on string, then add an action, variable, initialize variable, and I'm going to call this as recommend friend to store the boolean value for the recommend a friend checkbox. Then add an action, and then we are going to create 5 variables for basically rate host service 5, rate host service 4, and so forth. So I'm just going to copy this one, rate host service 5, add an action, a variable, initialize variable, rate host service 4, variable, so we have created all these variables, and I went ahead and what I did was I just renamed all the headers, so we know that this is for additional comments, this is for recommend friend, rate host service 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. So the next step is we are going to set these variables once the document has been uploaded. So if you see over here, it looks at PDF, PNG, JPEG, or JPG, and then it goes into this get file content, and we looked at the predict where it knows or it extracts those entities. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to set those variables right under the predict. So I'm going to click on this, add an action, and search for variables, and we are going to say set variable, and we are going to do the additional comments, and in the enter variable value, if you notice over here, it gives you this dynamic content. So if you scroll down and under predict, you're going to find the additional comments value. So keep on scrolling down till we see this additional comments value, and you click on it, so we are going to get that particular value. So similar to this, we are going to set all the remaining variables. Again, I'm going to go ahead and rename this set variable, and I'm going to say additional comments. Okay, so we are going to go ahead and set all these variables, and then we'll proceed. So now I have defined all these set variables for rate host service 5, rate host service 4, 3, 2, 1, and recommend a friend. So all of this thing has been set up or to set the variables. Now the next step is what we are going to do is we are going to define one more variable over here, and I'm going to call it just let's see here, initialize variable, and I'm going to call it rate host service as a general variable, and I'm going to change the value to integer. Okay, and where we are going to use this one is if someone has clicked on say 5, then set that integer value to 5 or 4 and so forth. Okay, so I've created that variable, and again I go into condition, and now what I'm going to do is I'm going to click on add an action, and I'm going to create a condition. So the condition is going to be if the rate host service 5 is equal to true, then in add an action I'm going to say variable and set the variable for rate host service, and the value is 5. But if it is the 5 was not set to true, then click on no, add another condition over here, say rate host service 4 and set it to true, and go on over here, say variable, set variable service 4, go to add an action, and I need to set a condition for 3 true, and an action, and variable three, and then finally we are going to check if 2 is set to true, and now we do not need to have one more condition. So if it's not selected, then I'm just going to assume that they did not like the service, and I'm going to set it to 1. Okay, so I'm going to set it to 1. Okay, so now we have got all our conditions set up. So if you scroll up over here, go to this, if you hover over it, it will show you rate host service 5 and so forth. So I'm going to rename this check and set rate host service. Okay, so once this part is done, the last part is we are going to set the file properties based on the values which have been written. But before we do that, we need to go back to this document library and go into library settings, and we are going to create those columns. So and we are going to create column called recommend friend, and it's a yes no, and by default I'm just going to say no. Click OK, and one last column called rate host service, and this time I'm going to say it's a number because we are going to store whether it's 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. So click on OK. Now our document library is ready to host all this information. So now the last step, what we are going to do on our Power Automate is we are going to click on plus, add an action, and we're going to search for SharePoint stuff and scroll down to find update file properties. So once we find out update file properties, click on it, and we are going to select the new one which we just came across. So we have selected that, and the document library is survey forms. And once I click on this, if you notice, we'll get when a file is created, there is ID property. So we are going to use that one to identify which file you're going to update it from. Now in the collection name, what we are going to do is we are going to use the predict value for collection name. So if you see over here, there is a collection name. So click on that. Additional comments, scroll down, select the additional comments variable. Classification date, I'm just going to go with, say, date value is UTC now. Click OK. Recommend a friend. Now I'm going to change this. By default it says yes, but I'm going to change it to enter custom value. And we are going to use the variable recommend friend. And then finally the rate host service, we are going to use the rate host service. And in the content type, we are just going to use the survey testing as the content type. Okay. And lastly, we are going to delete the one which was created by default. Now click on save. Once it is saved, just click on flow checker and everything is good to go. And what I'm going to do is now I'm going to delete this particular form which we created, and we are going to go ahead and upload all of these forms, 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Okay. And once these forms are uploaded, so now these forms are uploaded, so it will take a few minutes for the processing to start. If you go back over here, go to the main thing, and if you see, it has already started running. So you click on all runs, it's saying running, waiting. So go to this one. You will notice that okay, it has gone through this, and if you see over here, it's already processed that form. So if you go back over here, it will start showing you the values. So you have the survey document collection, that's the name which we gave it. And if you notice over here, now it has started populating all the fields. So it's still waiting on the last one to populate. But if you see over here, it has the additional comments of exceptional service, improve your customer service, good service. And in this scenario, we did not have the recommend a friend checked, so it's showing you those options. So now it has processed all these documents. At the beginning of the video, I mentioned that we'll be also looking at a handheld or handwritten form, which is this file, which is this particular scanned form. So I'm going to go ahead and upload that form, and let's see how it works. So it's this scanned version. And if you notice over here, it has uploaded that. Let's go back over here, go to survey testing. And if you see, now it's running this last form which we just uploaded. And if you notice, if you go back over here, and it is done actually now. So if you go back over here, and let's see, let's refresh this. And if you notice, this particular form is like, it picked up my handwriting where it says this is a testing, recommend a friend was set to yes, and the rate quality was at 5, so it has picked up all of this stuff. So in this particular video, we looked at how you can process your forms, including checkboxes, with AI Builder and Power Automate. As we run across more problems for the clients, we'll be uploading our solution on this YouTube channel. So please subscribe to our YouTube channel for more of the tech related videos, more on the AI, more on SharePoint, Office 365, and so forth. Thank you very much for watching.